Have you ever wondered why the world was split in two for most of the 20th century? It wasn't just about countries or borders, it was a war of ideas, a clash of two completely different ways of looking at the world, capitalism versus communism. This ideological battle defined an entire era, leading us to the brink of nuclear war and shaping the societies we live in today. So, what were they really fighting about? Let's break it down. Imagine two teams with completely different rulebooks for how to run a society. On one side you have Team Capitalism, championed by countries like the United States. Their core idea is private ownership. You, me, anyone can own things, a business, a house, a piece of land. The economy is driven by supply and demand in a free market. If you have a great idea and work hard, you can potentially become very wealthy. The government's role is generally to be a referee, making sure everyone plays fair but not controlling the game. The big promise of capitalism is freedom, the freedom to choose your own path, to innovate, and to build your own success. It's the classic story of the self-made entrepreneur. Now, let's look at the other side, Team Communism, with the Soviet Union as its star player. Their philosophy, born from the writings of Karl Marx, is the exact opposite. They believe that private ownership is the root of all problems because it creates a class struggle between the rich owners, the bourgeoisie, and the working class, the proletariat. Their solution: get rid of private property altogether. Everything, factories, farms, resources, is owned by the community, and the government, representing the people, manages it all. The goal is to create a classless society where wealth is distributed equally among everyone. The promise of communism is equality, no more rich, no more poor, just everyone working together for the common good. So, you have these two powerful ideas, both claiming to offer a better future for humanity. And after World War II, the world became their playing field. Europe was literally divided. In the West, countries like France and West Germany rebuilt their economies with capitalist principles. Backed by the United States through the Marshall Plan, they saw incredible economic growth and rising living standards. The marketplace was buzzing with competition, new products, and consumer choice. This was the poster child for capitalist success. Meanwhile, in the East, the Soviet Union established a buffer zone of communist states, like Poland, East Germany, and Hungary. This was the famous Iron Curtain. In these countries, the government took control of all industries. They implemented central planning where a group of officials would decide what to produce, how much to produce, and what the price would be. The focus was on heavy industry and military strength, often at the expense of consumer goods. You wouldn't find 10 different brands of cereal in a Soviet grocery store. You'd be lucky to find one. Life was more regimented, but the state guaranteed you a job, housing, and healthcare. This division wasn't just in Europe, it went global. The Cold War was this ideological battle playing out across the planet. The US and the USSR never fought each other directly. That would have meant nuclear Armageddon. Instead, they fought proxy wars. Think of Korea in the 1950s. The communist North, backed by China and the Soviets, invaded the capitalist South, backed by the US and the United Nations. The Korean War ended in a stalemate, leaving the country divided, to this day a perfect tragic symbol of the larger ideological split. Then there was Vietnam. It started as a fight for independence from France but quickly became another capitalism versus communism battleground. The US poured in troops and resources to support South Vietnam against the communist North, which was supplied by the Soviet Union and China. The war dragged on for years, cost millions of lives, and ultimately ended with a communist victory. It was a huge blow to American prestige and showed the immense difficulty of containing communism through military force. The competition wasn't just fought with guns, it was a battle for hearts and minds. There was the space race, for instance. When the Soviets launched Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite, it was a massive propaganda victory. It seemed to prove that the communist system could be more technologically advanced. The US responded by creating NASA and pouring billions into its own space program, culminating in the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969. One giant leap for mankind was also a giant leap for capitalism in the public imagination. Culture was another battlefield. The US exported Hollywood movies, jazz music, and blue jeans, symbols of freedom, individualism, and consumer culture. The Soviet Union promoted ballet, classical music, and socialist realist art, which glorified the worker and the state. Each side tried to paint the other as a dystopia. To the West, communism was a grim world of oppression, breadlines, and secret police. To the East, capitalism was a dog-eat-dog jungle of inequality, exploitation, and moral decay. So, which system was better? Well, as the 20th century wore on, the cracks in the communist model began to show. Central planning proved to be incredibly inefficient. Without the price signals and competition of a free market, it was hard for planners to know what people actually wanted or needed. This led to chronic shortages of basic goods and a lack of innovation. While the West was experiencing a boom in technology and consumer products, the East was falling behind. Moreover, the promise of a workers' paradise often turned into an authoritarian nightmare. To maintain control, communist governments suppressed dissent, controlled the media, and eliminated political freedoms. Uprisings in Hungary in 1956 and Czechoslovakia in 1968 were brutally crushed by Soviet tanks. The Berlin Wall, built in 1961, wasn't to keep capitalists out. It was to keep its own citizens from escaping to the West. It became a stark, concrete symbol of communist failure. By the 1980s, the Soviet economy was stagnating. The massive cost of the arms race with the US was crippling. The war in Afghanistan became their Vietnam a costly, demoralizing failure. In 1985, a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, came to power. He tried to reform the system with policies of glasnost or openness, and perestroika or restructuring, but it was too little, too late. Giving people a little freedom made them demand a lot more. The dominoes began to fall in 1989. Pro-democracy movements swept across Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia. One by one, they peacefully overthrew their communist governments. And then came the most iconic moment of all: the fall of the Berlin Wall. The sight of people joyfully tearing down that hated symbol of division was broadcast around the world. It was the end of an era. 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. The great ideological war was over, and capitalism had, for all intents and purposes, won. But the story doesn't end there. The victory of capitalism wasn't a perfect one. The transition from communism to capitalism in Russia and Eastern Europe was often chaotic and painful, leading to massive inequality and corruption. And even in the West, we see ongoing debates about the flaws of capitalism. Income inequality, financial crises, and environmental concerns are all major issues we grapple with today. Meanwhile, a new model has emerged in China. The Communist Party is still in absolute political control, but they've embraced a state-directed form of capitalism for their economy. This hybrid system has lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty and turned China into a global superpower, challenging the Western liberal democratic model. So, while the 20th century clash between pure communism and capitalism is over, the debate about the best way to organize society is far from settled. The fundamental questions remain: how do we balance freedom and equality? What is the proper role of the government in the economy? And how can we create a system that offers prosperity and dignity for everyone? The ideological war may have ended, but the conversation continues. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown interesting, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the ideas that shape our world. See you next time.